He once owned a body so perfect, it was deemed angelic. But his life ended with a body so grotesque, so foul, that its stench announced his arrival 3 rooms before he appeared. This is the story of Henry VIII, a king whose reign was a testament to absolute power and whose death was a horrifying, humiliating spectacle. This isn't the history you read in textbooks. This is the truth about the slow, agonizing decline of a monarch whose physical form betrayed his own divinity, culminating in a posthumous indignity that saw dogs lapping up his bodily fluids from the floor of his chapel. How did a man who defined an era come to such a repulsive end? As a young king, Henry VIII was the picture of health and virility. Born in 1491, he ascended the throne at just 17 and was hailed as the most handsome prince in all of Europe. A contemporary ambassador described him as having an angelic countenance and a powerful athletic build. Henry excelled at all the sports of his time, from hunting and wrestling to his great passion, jousting. This image of the ideal monarch, however, would be brutally shattered in an instant. The turning point came on the 24th of January, 1536, during a jousting tournament. The 4-year-old Henry was thrown from his horse, which then collapsed on top of him. The fall knocked him unconscious for 2 hours, and though he survived, the accident left him with a severe leg injury that would never fully heal. The wound festered into an open, oozing ulcer that emitted a repulsive, fetid odor. This constant physical pain and humiliating stench became a daily reality for the once proud king, and it marked the beginning of his dramatic transformation. Many historians believe the head injury from the fall may have caused permanent brain damage, exacerbating his pre-existing tendencies toward paranoia and fits of uncontrollable rage. With his mobility severely limited, Henry's vigorous lifestyle came to an end. His once trim waist, which was around 35 inches in his youth, swelled to an astonishing 52 inches. His weight skyrocketed to over 400 pounds, making him so obese that he required a special pulley system to be moved between rooms in his palaces. The doors themselves had to be widened to accommodate his massive girth. The handsome, athletic prince had been replaced by a bloated, tyrannical shell of his former self. Henry's physical and mental decline was hastened by a diet of pure excess. Records from the royal kitchens reveal a daily intake of roughly 5,000 calories, composed primarily of red meat and copious amounts of wine and beer. Vegetables were a rarity on his plate. This extravagant, protein-heavy regimen, combined with his forced inactivity, turned his body into a monument of decay. The festering ulcer on his leg worsened into a source of perpetual infection, a wound so deep that chroniclers claimed you could see the bone beneath the rotting flesh. The stench was so overpowering that courtiers had to hold perfumed handkerchiefs to their faces, struggling to conceal their revulsion while in his presence. The king, once so vain and obsessed with his image, was now a walking embodiment of disease and putrefaction. His physicians, operating with the limited medical knowledge of the time, only made things worse. They treated his wounds with barbaric methods like cauterization by hot iron and applied salves containing toxic ingredients such as arsenic and mercury. Regular bloodletting, a common practice, only served to weaken him further. As his body deteriorated, so too did his mind. His paranoia intensified, leading him to execute loyal friends and trusted advisors on a whim. His court lived in a state of constant terror, where a misplaced word or a suspicious glance could lead to a charge of treason. This monstrous transformation from a charismatic young prince to a grotesque and tyrannical figure was a chilling testament to how absolute power, combined with chronic pain and unchecked disease, could corrupt a man's body and soul. Henry VIII's final years were a relentless torment. Modern experts believe he suffered from a terrifying combination of ailments, including diabetes, severe gout, hypertension, and congestive heart failure. Trapped in a decaying body, he alternated between periods of excruciating pain, during which he screamed and cursed at his attendants, and moments of deep melancholy, where he would sit motionless for hours. As the end drew near, Henry's suffering intensified. In his final winter, gangrene set into his legs, and the stench became so unbearable that his courtiers, desperate to remain in the king's presence, were forced to hold perfumed handkerchiefs to their faces. The court became a place of miasma and terror, where no one dared to speak of the king's impending death, as predicting the monarch's demise was a treasonable offense under English law. Finally, on the 27th of January, 1547, the five-year-old king, realizing his time was short, allowed Archbishop Thomas Cranmer to be summoned. Unable to speak, Henry's final conscious act was to squeeze Cranmer's hand, a last desperate affirmation of his faith. In the early hours of the 28th of January, the man who had reshaped England and defied the Pope took his last breath. Yet, the indignity of his life continued even in death. Due to his immense size, a special coffin had to be built. While the body awaited its funeral, a macabre scene unfolded. The coffin, poorly sealed, began to leak. Contemporary accounts describe a horrifying sight. Putrid fluid trickled onto the chapel floor, where it was discovered and lapped up by stray dogs. This final, grotesque humiliation was a fitting, yet tragic, end for a king who believed himself to be above all men, only to be betrayed by his own mortal flesh. For a man so obsessed with his legacy, the final indignity was perhaps the greatest. As his body rotted and his mind unraveled, Henry was consumed by the desire to build the most magnificent tomb in all of Europe. He had seized the half-finished sarcophagus of his former advisor, Cardinal Wolsey, and began a colossal project to make it his own. The plans were staggering. A monument of black marble and gilded bronze, adorned with dozens of life-size statues, including a magnificent equestrian sculpture of the king himself, standing proudly on his steed. It was to be a permanent, glorious testament to his power and his place in history, a resting place fit for a semi-divine ruler. Yet, this grand vision, like so much of his life, would remain tragically unfulfilled. The man who tore his nation from the Catholic Church to secure his line and his legacy could not even complete his own monument. The project stalled, its pieces left scattered and unfinished as his physical health deteriorated. He was ultimately buried in a simple vault in St. George's Chapel, Windsor, beside Jane Seymour, the only wife to give him a son. His majestic tomb, the one he had planned to be a symbol of his eternal glory, was never completed. Its elaborate bronze decorations were eventually sold off, and the sarcophagus itself was repurposed centuries later for Lord Nelson, buried within the very cathedral Henry had founded. The king who had once stood as an exemplar of human power ended his life in a state of physical and mental decay, his dream of an everlasting monument to his greatness abandoned, leaving behind only an unfinished tomb and a body betrayed by its own mortality. Henry VIII's grotesque death serves as a powerful and chilling reminder of the limits of human power. The man who saw himself as a semi-divine authority, capable of reshaping a nation's religion and executing anyone who stood in his way, was ultimately no match for the frailty of his own body. His life, a story of ruthless ambition and absolute control, concluded as a grotesque testament to physical decay and the inevitable march of mortality. The great irony of his reign is that his most desperate, life-altering decisions, breaking with the Catholic Church and executing two of his wives, were all driven by a singular, obsessive desire for a male heir. He wanted a son to secure his dynasty, a powerful prince to continue his legacy. But this legacy was ultimately carried on by his daughters. His fragile son, Edward VI, died young. The throne passed first to Mary, who tried to reverse all of her father's reforms, and then to Elizabeth, the daughter of Anne Boleyn, the very woman he executed. It was Elizabeth who would usher in England's golden age, building a legacy far more stable and enduring than anything Henry could have imagined. The death of Henry VIII is more than a historical footnote. It's a profound moral lesson. The king who rewrote the laws of his nation could not rewrite the laws of nature. In the end, his body, once a symbol of royal strength and vitality, became a horrifying symbol of the transience of all earthly glory. His story reminds us that no matter how powerful, we are all ultimately equal before death, and that the most enduring legacies are often born from the most unexpected places. If you found this story of a king's fall from grace fascinating, hit that subscribe button to join us for more shocking and untold stories from history.